Chosen one, stop. Don't scroll past this. There's a reason this message found you now, not yesterday when you were distracted, not tomorrow when it might be too late. Right now, in this exact moment when your soul is crying out for answers. Why are you awake at 3 a.m. feeling like something's coming? Why does every news headline feel like a countdown timer ticking towards zero? Why do you look in the mirror and see someone who's been through hell, but somehow you're still breathing? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. If you're watching this, you've been marked, not cursed marked. There's a divine fingerprint on your forehead that only heaven can see. And right now, while the world sleeps in spiritual darkness, you've been awakened for a reason that will shake you to your core. There's a reason this message found you now. The siren is sounding in the night before the city breaks. I'm talking about your city, your family, your very soul standing at the edge of something catastrophic and glorious all at once. You feel it, don't you? That trembling in your spirit, that restlessness that keeps you searching, scrolling, seeking. The ground beneath your feet isn't just shaking, it's about to split wide open, and most people are going to fall through the cracks. But not you. You've survived things that should have destroyed you. Every heartbreak that didn't kill you, every betrayal that didn't break you, every loss that didn't bury you. It was preparation. Divine preparation for what's coming next. If you've ever survived something that should have broken, you comment, "I'm still here." Because in the next 60 minutes, I'm going to show you why the shaking isn't the end, but your calling. Why the chaos isn't random, but orchestrated. Why you're not going crazy feeling like everything's about to shatter. You're going sane in an insane world. Before we dive deeper into this life-altering revelation, I want to thank every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here, your support, your time, your attention. It all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and let that gratitude flow however God leads you. But right now, I need you to understand something that will change everything. You weren't meant to just survive the shaking. You were meant to be the unshakable force that others cling to when their world collapses. The question is, are you ready to step into who you really are? Because time's up. The hiding is over. Your moment has arrived. Do you feel it creeping into your bones at night, that sense that something catastrophic is brewing just beneath the surface of our reality? Have you noticed how conversations feel hollow now? How even your closest friends seem to be sleepwalking through life while darkness gathers around them? When did the world stop making sense? And why does it feel like you're the only one who can see the cracks spreading through everything we once trusted? Listen to me, chosen one. What I'm about to reveal will shatter every comfortable illusion you've been clinging to. There's a storm coming, but it's not the kind that brings rain or wind. This storm is silent, invisible, and more deadly than any hurricane that's ever made landfall on American soil. A spiritual disease is already in the air. But it's not in your lungs. It's in your soul. You've felt it, haven't you? That creeping numbness that settles over your spirit when you watch the news. That hollow ache when you look at your grandchildren and wonder what kind of world they're inheriting. That growing sense that we're all actors in a play where someone changed the script and nobody told us what our lines are supposed to be anymore. This isn't depression. This isn't anxiety. This is spiritual warfare manifesting in the hearts and minds of millions of Americans who don't even realize they're under attack. Jesus warned us about this exact moment. In Matthew 24, he painted a picture so vivid it should terrify every believer. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains. But here's what most pastors won't tell you. Those birth pains aren't just political or natural disasters. They're spiritual contractions, squeezing the life out of our collective soul. Do you ever feel the world no longer makes sense, that something dark is closing in, and no one's talking about it? You're not losing your mind. You're gaining spiritual sight in a world that's gone spiritually blind. The prophet Jeremiah saw this coming over 2,500 years ago. In Jeremiah 6:14, he warned us about leaders who would dress the wound of my people as though it were not serious. Peace, peace, they say, when there is no peace. Sound familiar? Every politician promising solutions while the foundations crumble. Every preacher offering feel-good messages while souls are hemorrhaging hope. Every expert telling us everything's fine while your spirit screams that nothing is fine. They're treating a heart attack with a band-aid. But here's what's really happening, and this will shake you to your core. A fog is coming. Not the kind that rolls in from the Atlantic Ocean and blankets Manhattan in the early morning hours. This is a fog of confusion, a blinding mist that will silence truth and make even the strongest believers question everything they've ever known about God, about America, about their own identity. This fog is already seeping into our churches. You've seen it, services that feel more like entertainment than encounters with the Almighty. Sermons that tickle ears instead of piercing hearts. Leaders more concerned with attendance numbers than the condition of their congregation's souls. The fog has infiltrated our schools, where children are taught that there are dozens of genders but can't recite the 10 Commandments. It's poisoned our media, where truth is whatever gets the most clicks, and lies spread faster than wildfire across social platforms. And it's coming for your family next. Right now, as I speak these words, there's a battle raging in the spiritual realm over your loved ones. Every time your adult children roll their eyes when you mention God, that's not just generational difference, that's spiritual blindness spreading like a contagion. Every time your spouse seems more interested in Netflix than prayer, that's not just fatigue, that's the fog settling over their consciousness. The enemy isn't just after individuals anymore. He's after entire bloodlines. He's systematically dismantling the spiritual foundations that built this nation, and he's using the very freedoms we cherish to do it. You want to know why everything feels so urgent right now? Because we're living in the eye of the storm, that eerie calm before the hurricane makes landfall, that deceptive peace before the levees break, that moment when you can still breathe before the floodwaters rise. But here's what the enemy doesn't want you to know: you weren't placed in this moment by accident. Every trial you've endured, every heartbreak you've survived, every mountain you've climbed was preparation for this exact hour. While others are panicking, you're going to be the calm in their chaos. While others are losing their minds, you're going to be the voice of reason. While others are drowning in despair, you're going to be the lifeline they grab onto. God didn't save you from every storm in your past just to let you perish in this one. If your spirit already senses something is off, type, "I see it." Let's break the silence together, because what I'm about to show you next will reveal exactly why you've been feeling this way, and more importantly, what you're supposed to do about it. The fog is real, the storm is coming, but you, dear chosen one, you were born for such a time as this. The question isn't whether you can survive what's coming. The question is, are you ready to become the spiritual lighthouse that guides others through the darkness? You know what breaks my heart? Every single day, I get messages from beautiful souls like you who whisper the same devastating question. "Pastor, why do I feel so alone, even when I'm surrounded by people who love me?" Let me tell you something that's going to shatter every lie the enemy has whispered in your ear during those 3 a.m. moments when sleep won't come and the silence feels deafening. You've always felt different, haven't you? Even at family gatherings, even in your own living room, even sitting in the same pew you've occupied for decades. There's this invisible wall, this unexplainable distance that makes you feel like you're watching life through glass instead of living it. Your children grew up and moved away. Your spouse went home to glory. Friends became memories. And somewhere in the quiet of your kitchen, stirring coffee that tastes like loneliness, you've wondered if God forgot about you. Why did I outlive them? Why am I still here when the people I needed most are gone? Why do I feel invisible in a world that moves too fast and speaks too loud? Stop right there. I need you to hear this with every fiber of your being. That wasn't a curse. That was a calling. You weren't rejected. You were preserved, set apart, hidden for this hour. The Apostle Peter knew something about feeling different, about being set apart when it hurt. In 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9, he writes these earth-shaking words: "You are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people." Chosen generation. Not chosen individual, chosen generation. Do you understand what that means? You're not just a random senior citizen wondering why your body aches and your purpose feels unclear. You are part of a generation that God specifically chose, specifically preserved, specifically positioned for the most critical moment in human history. You survived the Great Depression stories your parents told. You lived through wars your generation fought. You witnessed the moral fabric of America changing before your eyes. You've seen technology explode from rotary phones to smartphones that know more about your grandchildren than you do. And through it all, through every loss, every disappointment, every moment when you felt forgotten, God was whispering, "Not yet. I'm not finished with you yet." Why do you think you're still here when so many others aren't? Because you're not a leftover, you're a lifeboat. In a world that's drowning in confusion, chaos, and spiritual darkness, God preserved you to be the vessel that carries His truth to the next generation. Your wrinkles aren't signs of decay. They're battle scars of someone who survived everything hell threw at them and still has faith. Your slow pace isn't a limitation. It's wisdom that refuses to be rushed by a world that's racing toward destruction. Your quiet voice isn't weakness. It's the sound of someone who's learned that truth doesn't need to shout to be heard. But here's where it gets intense, and I need you to lean in close, because the enemy doesn't want you to hear this next part. You know why you feel invisible? Because God has been hiding you in plain sight. Like David in the wilderness, like Moses in the desert, like Esther in the palace, you've been in divine concealment, being prepared for a moment that requires everything you've learned, everything you've survived, everything you've become. The world looks at you and sees someone past their prime. God looks at you and sees someone who's finally reached their prime. You think your best days are behind you? I'm here to tell you that everything you've been through, every tear you've cried, every prayer you've whispered in the dark, was preparation for what's coming next. Do you feel that stirring in your spirit right now? That's not nostalgia. That's activation. The same God who called Moses at 80, who used Anna the prophetess at 84, who gave Sarah a miracle when everyone counted her out, is calling you right now. Not despite your age, but because of it. You have something the younger generation doesn't have. Perspective. You've seen what happens when nations turn away from God. You've witnessed the consequences of moral compromise. You've lived through enough seasons to know that what goes around truly comes around. And right now, in this moment of global shaking, God needs voices that can't be intimidated, can't be bought, can't be silenced by trends or cancel culture or political correctness. He needs voices that have been seasoned by suffering, refined by loss, and purified by time. Say it with me, and I mean this with everything in you. I am chosen. Say it again. I am chosen. Keep saying it until the doubt trembles. Keep declaring it until the lies scatter. Keep proclaiming it until your spirit rises up and remembers who you really are. You are not forgotten. You are not invisible. You are not too old, too tired, or too late. You are chosen. You are preserved. You are positioned. And what's about to happen next is going to prove that everything you've endured was worth it. Because the world is about to discover that God's secret weapons have been hiding in nursing homes, living in quiet neighborhoods, sitting in rocking chairs, praying in garden rooms, and they're about to be unleashed at exactly the right moment. The question is, are you ready to stop hiding and start rising? You know what I'm talking about, don't you? That gnawing feeling in your gut that something's not right. That your carefully constructed world, your retirement plans, your health insurance, your family stability, your church community feels like it's built on quicksand. What if the very structure you've built your peace on was never real peace? Let me tell you something that's going to shake you to your bones. What you're feeling isn't paranoia, it's prophecy. The Holy Spirit is sounding an alarm in your spirit because He sees what's coming before your natural eyes can perceive it. Look around you. The economy that promised security for your golden years is crumbling like a house of cards. The healthcare system you trusted is failing the very people who built this nation. Families are splitting apart faster than you can say divorce papers. Churches are closing their doors, while wolves in sheep's clothing preach prosperity from golden pulpit stages. But here's the shocking truth that most Christians won't tell you. God is the one shaking everything. Hebrews 12:27 says it plain as day. The words "once more" indicate the removing of what can be shaken, that is, created things so that what cannot be shaken may remain. You thought the enemy was attacking your peace, but what if God is removing your false peace so you can find the real thing? Every sleepless night you've had lately, every anxious thought about the future, every moment you've looked at the news and felt your heart sink, that's not the devil tormenting you. That's God waking you up from a spiritual coma you didn't even know you were in. You've been living in a house built on sand, calling it your rock. You've been trusting in systems that were designed to fail, calling them your security. You've been depending on people who are just as broken as you are, calling them your salvation. Are you ready for God to remove everything false, so only the eternal can remain? Because ready or not, it's happening. Right now, in real time. The scaffolding is breaking, but the cornerstone stands. Think about it. How many times have you said, "If I just had enough money in my 401 Kelvin, I'd have peace"? How many nights have you lain awake worrying about your children or grandchildren, thinking, "If they just made better choices, I'd have peace"? How many doctor visits have you walked out of thinking, "If this test comes back negative, I'll have peace"? That's not peace. That's conditional calm. That's circumstantial comfort. That's temporary tranquility hanging by a thread that any crisis can cut. God is saying, enough. He's tired of watching you build your identity on shakeable things. He's tired of seeing you find your worth in worldly accomplishments that rust and decay. He's tired of you putting your hope in politicians who lie, doctors who guess, and bank accounts that fluctuate with every market crash. So He's shaking everything that can be shaken. Your health might be shaking. Your finances might be trembling. Your relationships might be quaking. Your church might be crumbling. Your confidence in the future might be fracturing like glass. And you're asking, "God, why are you letting this happen to me?" Wrong question. The right question is, "God, what are you revealing to me?" Because here's the mind-blowing revelation. God's not destroying you. He's separating you from everything that can't follow you into your next season. Every false foundation that's cracking wasn't meant to hold the weight of your destiny anyway. Every relationship that's falling apart wasn't strong enough to support the person God is calling you to become. Every security blanket that's being ripped away was actually a straitjacket keeping you from your true calling. You think you're losing everything. God knows He's setting you free. The job that defined you for 40 years, that wasn't your identity. The house you thought you'd die in, that wasn't your home. The retirement plans you spent decades perfecting, that wasn't your future. You are not your circumstances. You are not your bank account. You are not your medical diagnosis. You are not your family dysfunction. You are not your past mistakes or your current struggles. You are a child of the Most High God, chosen before the foundation of the world, equipped with power that can move mountains, destined for glory that makes earthly success look like pocket change. But you can't walk in that truth while you're still clinging to lies. So God is prying your fingers off everything that's keeping you small. He's removing every false confidence so you can discover the unshakable confidence that comes from knowing who you are in Him. This isn't punishment. This is promotion. This isn't abandonment. This is appointment. This isn't the end of your story. This is the beginning of your legend. Comment, "I will not be shaken if you choose to stand when everything else falls." Because while the world around you crumbles, while others panic and despair, while the news grows darker and the future feels uncertain, you're going to stand like a lighthouse in a hurricane, unshakable, unmovable, anchored to the rock of ages. The question isn't whether the shaking will continue. It will. The question is whether you'll let it shake you, or whether you'll let it shake everything false away from you, leaving only what's eternal, what's true, what's unbreakable. Your choice, your moment, your destiny hanging in the balance. What will it be? Listen to me very carefully, chosen one. What I'm about to tell you will challenge everything you think you know about survival in these last days. The world is screaming at you to stay visible, stay connected, stay plugged in. But God is whispering something entirely different. God didn't say, hide to escape. He said, hide to be made holy. You see, there's a difference between hiding in fear and hiding in faith. There's a difference between running away and being called away. And right now, in this hour when everything you thought was stable is crumbling, God is not asking you to disappear from your purpose. He's asking you to disappear from the noise so you can hear His voice clearly. But here's what's breaking my heart. I'm watching beautiful, faithful people your age, people who've served God for decades, and they're confused. They're asking, Pastor, why do I feel like withdrawing? Why don't I want to be around people anymore? Am I becoming antisocial? Am I losing my mind? No, dear heart, you're not losing your mind. You're finding your calling. Look at Elijah, this mighty prophet who called down fire from heaven, who outran chariots, who confronted kings. Where did God send him when the pressure got too intense? To a cave. Not to escape Jezebel's threats, but to encounter the still small voice that would redirect his entire ministry. Go out and stand on the mount before the Lord, God told him. But first, Elijah had to get alone. He had to separate from the chaos, from the fear, from the voices telling him he was finished. And in that cave, in that place of holy solitude, God didn't rebuke him for hiding. God met him there. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness of Midian before God called him to deliver Israel. 40 years, that's longer than some of you have been saved. Was Moses wasting time? Was he running from his destiny? No, he was being prepared in private for a public miracle. The shepherd's staff he carried for 4 decades became the rod that split the Red Sea. The desert that seemed like exile became his training ground for leading 2 million people through the wilderness. And Jesus, our perfect example, what did he do before he launched his ministry? He disappeared into the wilderness for 40 days. Not because he was afraid of the crowds, but because he needed to be alone with the Father before he faced the enemy. The olive must be crushed in private before it becomes oil. Now, I need you to understand something that might shock you. This season you're in, this pulling away, this desire for quiet, this feeling like you don't fit in the world anymore, this isn't your decline. This is your preparation for your greatest assignment. You've lived through World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, the Cold War, 9/11s, multiple recessions, the 2020 pandemic. You've buried parents, spouses, friends. You've raised children, built careers, served in churches. You've seen America change in ways that break your heart. And now, in your golden years, when you should be relaxing, when you should be enjoying your grandchildren, when you should be at peace, instead, you feel this restlessness, this sense that something big is coming, this urgency to prepare. That's not paranoia, beloved. That's prophecy. God is calling His seasoned warriors into a different kind of battle position. Not the front lines where you've served for decades, but the prayer closets where intercession happens. Not the committees and boards where you've given your best years, but the secret place where intimacy with God deepens. But here's where most people get it wrong. They think hiding means becoming irrelevant. They think solitude means uselessness. They think because they're not running around busy like they used to, they're somehow less valuable to the kingdom. Stop that lie right now. Your hiding season is not your exile, it's your elevation. Turn off the noise. I'm talking about the news that's designed to terrify you, the social media that's designed to divide you, the entertainment that's designed to distract you. God is calling you to a holy fast from the chaos of this world. Let go of the good old days to prepare for God's new day. Yes, America was different when you were young. Yes, the church was different. Yes, morality was different. But lamenting the past will blind you to the purpose God has for your present. The psalmist wrote, "He brought me up out of the pit of destruction, out of the miry clay, and he set my feet upon a rock, making my footsteps firm." Notice the sequence. Up, out, then set. First, God lifts you out of where you were. Then he removes you from what was pulling you down. Then, and only then, does he establish you in your new position. You're not being benched, warrior. You're being positioned. In your solitude, God is going to show you things he couldn't show you in the crowd. In your quiet hours, he's going to download strategies for your family's survival that you couldn't hear in the noise. In your hiding place, he's going to give you intercession that will literally change the spiritual atmosphere over your city. This is not the time to feel guilty about saying no to every church event. This is not the time to feel bad about limiting your social calendar. This is not the time to apologize for needing more space, more silence, more time alone with God. This is the time to embrace what God is doing in your spirit and trust that he's preparing you for something you can't even imagine yet. Write this down. This hiding season is not my exile. It's my elevation. Because what God is about to do through your prayers, through your wisdom, through your seasoned faith, is going to astound even you. But here's the question that will determine everything. Are you going to trust God's call to solitude, or are you going to fight it because it doesn't look like what you expected your golden years to be? You've been sitting there, haven't you, watching the world unravel thread by thread, watching leaders fail, watching institutions crumble, watching your own children and grandchildren drift further from the faith you've held sacred for decades. And somewhere deep in your spirit you've been asking yourself, God, what's my purpose now? Am I done? Am I just supposed to fade quietly into the background? Let me tell you something that's going to shake you awake. The enemy has sold you the biggest lie of your generation. He's whispered in your ear that your season is over, that your voice doesn't matter anymore, that you should step aside and let the younger generation handle things, that your prayers are outdated, your wisdom is irrelevant, and your fire has burned out. That's not just wrong, that's demonic. Listen to me, chosen one. While the world is having a nervous breakdown, God is having a divine setup. And you, yes, you sitting there thinking, your best days are behind you, you are the secret weapon he's been saving for such a time as this. Isaiah 60:1 doesn't have an expiration date. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. Not arose and shone yesterday. Not will arise and shine someday. Arise, shine, now. You think God spent 70, 80, 90 years building character in you just to bench you in the fourth quarter? You think he allowed you to survive the Great Depression, World War II, Vietnam, 9/11s, and every personal hell you've walked through just so you could quietly retire to a rocking chair and watch Netflix? Hell no. You're not retired, you're refired. You're not winding down, you're waking up. You're not in your sunset years, you're in your sunrise moment. The very trials that should have broken you have instead forged you into spiritual steel. Every betrayal, every loss, every midnight hour, when you thought you couldn't take another step that wasn't punishment, that was preparation. Preparation for right now. While 20-somethings are having anxiety attacks over their student loans, you survived the Cuban Missile Crisis. While 30-somethings are melting down over social media comments, you raised families on $40 a week and trusted God to provide. While 40-somethings are seeking therapy for their childhood trauma, you buried your parents, buried your friends, maybe even buried your children, and you're still standing. Do you understand what that makes you? You're not a senior citizen. You're a spiritual Navy SEAL. You're not elderly. You're battle-tested. You're not over the hill. You're on top of the mountain with a view that takes decades to earn. And right now, while the world is having a collective panic attack, God is looking for lighthouses. Not spotlights, lighthouses. Not people who shine for a moment and then flicker out, but people who have learned to burn steady through every storm life could throw at them. That's you. Your prayers don't echo in empty rooms, they thunder in heaven's halls. Your whispered "Jesus, help us" carries more weight than $1 million platform. Your weathered hands lifted in worship move more mountains than all the modern church productions combined. But here's what breaks my heart. The enemy has convinced you to whisper when God is calling you to roar. He's convinced you to step back when God is calling you to step up. He's convinced you to apologize for your faith when God is calling you to apologize for nothing. While your generation sits quietly in the back pew, afraid to offend anyone, the very foundations of everything you fought for are being torn down. While you bite your tongue to keep the peace, your grandchildren are being fed lies that would have horrified your parents. While you stay silent to be polite, the darkness is advancing like a flood, and God is saying, enough. This is your Esther moment. This is your for such a time as this calling. The very reason you've lived so long, survived so much, and still have breath in your lungs is because God knew this day was coming. He knew there would come a moment when experience would matter more than energy, when wisdom would trump youth, when the fear of man would have to bow to the fear of the Lord. That moment is now. You are the remnant. You are the ones who remember when America prayed. You are the ones who remember when churches preached truth instead of tickling ears. You are the ones who remember when right was right and wrong was wrong, and nobody had to apologize for saying so. And your memory is not nostalgia, it's prophecy. Because what was, shall be again. What you witnessed in your youth, your grandchildren will witness in theirs. But only if you rise, only if you refuse to go quietly into that good night, only if you decide that your final chapter will be your finest hour. The world doesn't need your retirement, the world needs your rebellion. Not rebellion against God, rebellion against the lies that say you're done, you're useless, you're irrelevant. You are the storm they didn't see coming. While they're focused on silencing the young and the loud, God has been preparing the seasoned and the steady. While they're trying to cancel the platforms, God has been anointing the prayers. While they're working to shut down the voices, God has been raising up the vessels. Your finest hour isn't behind you, it's right in front of you. If you're ready to be used in your final and finest hour type, use me, Lord. Because what happens next depends entirely on whether you're willing to stop hiding and start rising. Listen to me, chosen one. We're standing at the edge of eternity, and I need you to feel the weight of this moment pressing down on your chest like a 1,000-pound anchor. Because what I'm about to tell you could be the difference between walking through the door God has opened for you and watching it slam shut forever. Remember the parable of the 10 virgins? Jesus told this story for a reason that cuts straight to the bone of human nature. 10 women waiting for the bridegroom. 5 were ready. 5 thought they had time. When the cry went out at midnight, "Behold, the bridegroom comes." Half of them scrambled in the darkness, desperate for oil that should have been in their lamps hours before. And you know what happened? The door was shut. Matthew 25:12 records the most terrifying words in all of Scripture. "Truly I say to you, I do not know you." They missed it. Not because they weren't invited, not because they weren't worthy. They missed it because they thought they had more time. Are you praying for open doors while ignoring the knock? Right now, as I speak these words, God is knocking on the door of your heart with the urgency of a father trying to save his child from a burning house. But here's what breaks my heart. Here's what keeps me awake at night praying for people just like you. You're so busy asking God to open new doors that you can't hear him pounding on the one right in front of you. What if tomorrow is too late? What if the stirring you felt when this message started was your last invitation? What if the restlessness in your spirit, the dreams that wake you up sweating, the feeling that something massive is coming, what if that was God's final call? I've watched it happen. I've seen people who felt the call, knew they were chosen, sensed the urgency, and they said, "Let me finish this first. Let me get my affairs in order. Let me wait until I'm really ready." They never got ready, and the opportunity passed them by like a freight train in the night, leaving nothing but the echo of what could have been. But here's where this gets personal. Here's where this cuts deeper than any sword. What if the pain you've survived wasn't just for you? What if every sleepless night, every tear you've cried, every moment you thought you couldn't take another step, what if all of that suffering was preparing you to guide someone else through their darkest hour? What if there's a soul out there right now drowning in despair, and God has been training you to throw them the lifeline? What if your daughter, your grandson, your neighbor, your co-worker, what if they're depending on you to step into your calling so you can pull them out of the pit they don't even know they're falling into? And what if you wait too long? What if you're so comfortable in your spiritual lukewarmness that you miss the moment when God needs you most? What if the very people you love most in this world, the ones you pray for every night, what if they perish because you were too afraid, too comfortable, too convinced you had more time to answer the call? The blood will be on your hands. Not because you're evil, but because you were unprepared. Ezekiel 33:6 doesn't mince words. If the watchman sees the sword coming and does not blow the trumpet to warn the people, and the sword comes and takes someone's life, that person's life will be taken because of their sin, but I will hold the watchman accountable for their blood. You are the watchman. This is your trumpet. This is your moment. That stirring you felt in the beginning when I told you there was a reason this message found you now, that wasn't coincidence. That wasn't your imagination. That was God Almighty, the creator of the universe, calling your name in the darkness and saying, "I need you now." And he's still calling. But the question that will determine your eternal legacy isn't whether God is calling. The question is whether you'll answer before the door closes forever. If you hear his voice today, don't harden your heart. Share this message. Someone you love needs this word. Someone is counting on you to be brave enough to act while there's still time. Because tomorrow might be too late. You know what nobody talks about? The silence that comes after the storm. Not the peaceful kind of silence you read about in greeting cards. I'm talking about the deafening, bone-deep silence that follows devastation. The kind that makes your ears ring with questions nobody wants to answer. Right now, as you sit there watching this, I can feel it radiating through the screen. That hollow ache in your chest. That place where your faith used to sit so confidently, now cracked wide open like broken concrete after an earthquake. You didn't just survive a shaking in the world, you survived a shaking in your soul. And dear chosen one, let me tell you something that might cut you to the core. You're not crazy for feeling like you're walking through spiritual wreckage. You're not weak for questioning everything you once believed was solid. You're not faithless for wondering if God forgot your address somewhere between your prayers and your pain. You're human. And you're holy. Both at the same time. Listen carefully. In 1 Kings chapter 19, the prophet Elijah, this giant of faith who called down fire from heaven, found himself running for his life, hiding under a scraggly broom tree in the desert, begging God to let him die. This man, who had just witnessed the most spectacular display of divine power, was now so broken he couldn't see past his own despair. But here's what happened next that will shatter every religious cliché you've ever heard. God didn't show up in the earthquake that split the mountains. He didn't appear in the wind that tore rocks apart. He wasn't even in the fire that consumed everything in its path. He came in the whisper, not in the earthquake, not in the fire, but the whisper. You've become a sanctuary that's still smoldering from the fire, but somehow still sacred. Your walls might be charred, your windows might be shattered, but the Holy of Holies in your heart, that's still standing, that's still breathing, that's still waiting for heaven to speak in the language only broken saints can understand. But I need you to face something that's going to make you uncomfortable. You've been sitting in this aftermath thinking you're the victim of what happened to you, thinking you're the casualty of circumstances beyond your control, thinking you're the wounded soldier who barely made it off the battlefield alive. What if I told you that's only half the story? What if the shaking wasn't meant to destroy you, but to reveal what can't be shaken? What if the fire wasn't sent to burn you up, but to burn away everything that was never really you to begin with? What if this devastating silence isn't God's absence, but God's invitation to hear Him in a way you never could when your life was full of noise? I'm looking at seniors across America right now who've lived through decades of promises that didn't pan out, marriages that crumbled, children who walked away, dreams that died slow, agonizing deaths, health that betrayed you, finances that vanished, friends who became strangers. You've watched the world you helped build get torn down by people who don't remember what it cost to build it. You've seen values you held sacred get mocked on prime-time television. You've felt your voice get smaller while the chaos gets louder. And somewhere in the middle of all that shaking, you started wondering if you heard God wrong your whole life. But what if you didn't? What if this isn't the end of your story, but the beginning of your most important chapter? What if the very fact that you're still here, still breathing, still seeking, still hoping against hope, is proof that there's something indestructible inside you that hell itself cannot touch? The prophet Elijah thought he was the only one left, thought he was standing alone against the darkness. But God whispered to him, "I have 7,000 others who haven't bowed their knee." You're not alone, chosen one. You're part of a remnant that can't be counted, can't be bought, and can't be broken. The world needs what you carry. The world needs your scars because they're proof that love is stronger than destruction. The world needs your voice because it carries the weight of wisdom that only comes through fire. And now that the dust is settling, heaven is asking you one haunting question: what will you do with what's left? Because what's left isn't the end. It's the raw material for a miracle. The question is, are you ready to let God build something beautiful from your beautiful wreckage? You know what breaks my heart? Walking through the ruins of what used to be your life and hearing nothing but silence. The job that defined you for 30 years? Gone. The marriage you thought would last forever? Shattered. The children who used to call every Sunday, too busy with their own chaos to remember you exist. And there you are, standing in the middle of your personal ground zero, asking God the question that's been burning in your chest for months. Why am I still here? Dear chosen one, what if I told you that question is about to be answered in a way that will rock you to your very foundation? What if the reason you didn't fall is because God still needs your voice? Listen to me carefully. You've been walking through your own personal book of Job, haven't you? Everything that could be stripped away has been stripped away. Your health took a hit. Your savings account looks like a ghost town. Friends you trusted for decades walked away when you needed them most. But here's what the enemy didn't count on. Here's what hell itself didn't see coming. You're still breathing. You're still here. You're still standing. And that, my friend, is not an accident. That is divine preservation for divine purpose. In Isaiah chapter 6 verse 8, the prophet heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" And Isaiah responded with 5 words that changed the trajectory of human history. "Here am I. Send me." But here's what most people miss about that moment. Isaiah didn't respond from a place of perfection. He responded from a place of purification. His lips had been touched with burning coals. His sins had been purged. His pride had been stripped away. Sound familiar? You see, God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. And right now, in this moment, while you're sitting there thinking your best days are behind you, God is preparing to use everything you've been through as ammunition for what's coming next. That divorce that nearly destroyed you. It taught you compassion for broken hearts. That financial collapse that left you starting over at 65. It taught you that security doesn't come from bank accounts. That health scare that made you face your mortality. It taught you that every day is a gift and every breath is borrowed time. You thought you were being punished, but you were being prepared. Can you hear it? That sound echoing through the wasteland of what used to be your comfortable life. It's not the sound of defeat, it's the sound of a trumpet, a single trumpet blowing across a burnt battlefield, calling the wounded warriors back to their feet. Because survival wasn't the end game, chosen one. It was the test, and now the calling is beginning. You want to know why you can't sleep at night? Why you lie there staring at the ceiling feeling like something's stirring in your spirit? Why you've been drawn to messages like this when you used to fast forward through anything that sounded too spiritual? It's because God is downloading something into your heart that He's been saving for such a time as this. Think about it. In a world where 8-year-olds think they know everything and 0-year-olds are having midlife crises, God needs voices that have been seasoned by fire. He needs warriors who fought real battles, not keyboard battles. He needs people who understand that true strength comes from being broken and rebuilt by the Master's hands. Your generation survived the Cold War. You lived through recessions that make today's economic troubles look like hiccups. You raised families when marriage actually meant something. You worked jobs that required integrity, not just influence. And now, when the world is coming apart at the seams, when families are destroying themselves with smartphones and social media, when young people are more connected to Wi-Fi than they are to wisdom, now God is calling you out of retirement, not to fix everything, but to be the voice of truth in a world drowning in lies. You know what Jeremiah said when God called him? I'm too young. You know what Moses said? I'm too old. You know what Isaiah said? I'm too sinful. What's your excuse going to be? Because let me tell you something that's going to shake you. Every setback you've experienced, every loss you've endured, every night you've cried yourself to sleep, wondering if God had forgotten your name, it was all preparation for this moment. The enemy wanted to silence you permanently. He wanted to bury your voice under a pile of regrets and what-ifs. He wanted you to spend your golden years bitter, broken, and irrelevant. But God had other plans. God preserved you, protected you, kept you alive when others didn't make it, kept your mind sharp when it could have been clouded, kept your heart soft when it could have turned to stone. Why? Because He's been saving you for such a time as this. The world doesn't need another motivational speaker. It needs prophetic voices who've been through hell and came back with fire in their bones. It needs intercessors whose prayers carry the weight of authentic suffering. It needs leaders who know the difference between success and significance. It needs you. Right now, as I'm speaking these words, can you feel something stirring? Something that's been dormant for years, suddenly coming alive? That's not nostalgia, beloved. That's not wishful thinking. That's the Holy Spirit breathing on the coals of your calling that never went out. They just got buried under life's debris. The trumpet is sounding, the battlefield is ready, and God is asking the same question. He asked Isaiah, "Whom shall I send?" If your heart is burning right now, comment, "I'm listening, Lord." Because what I'm about to tell you next will reveal exactly why you've been hidden away, preserved, and prepared for this unprecedented moment in human history. You feel it stirring in your bones, don't you? That ancient fire that everyone said died out years ago. That warrior spirit they told you to put away when you got your first gray hair. That prophetic voice they said belonged to another generation. They lied. Right now, while the young are distracted by their screens and the middle-aged are drowning in their mortgages, God is doing something extraordinary. He's awakening the remnant, the silver-haired prophets, the prayer-worn watchmen, the forgotten warriors who've been quietly interceding in living rooms and church pews for decades. You think you're alone, but right now, God is awakening thousands like you, hidden warriors, silver-haired prophets, prayer-worn watchmen. Let me paint you a picture that will shake your understanding of these last days. In 1 Kings 19, when Elijah thought he was the only one left standing for God, the Lord revealed something that changed everything. Yet I reserve 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed down to Baal. 7,000 hidden remnant warriors that Elijah didn't even know existed. How many do you think God has reserved today? Like coals scattered under ashes, the remnant are glowing again. You've been buried under decades of act your age, and slow down and let the younger generation handle it. But God doesn't see your wrinkles, He sees your wisdom. He doesn't count your years, He counts your prayers. He doesn't measure your energy, He measures your faith. And your faith can move mountains that their technology never could. This isn't about age, dear one, this is about assignment. Joel 2:28 declares, "And afterward I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy, your old men will dream dreams, your young men will see visions." Did you catch that? Your old men will dream dreams. Not used to dream, will dream. Present tense, future tense. Your time is now. But here's what breaks my heart and should break yours too. While you've been sitting in the back pew thinking your time has passed, the enemy has been working overtime to convince an entire generation that experience doesn't matter, that wisdom is outdated, that the old ways are irrelevant. What if I told you that's exactly what he's afraid of? What if I told you that your decades of walking with God, your battle-tested faith, your prayer-soaked wisdom is exactly what this generation needs to survive what's coming? What if the very thing you think disqualifies you, your age, is actually your greatest weapon? Listen to me carefully. When Gideon faced an impossible army, God didn't give him more soldiers. He gave him 300 tested warriors. Not the youngest, not the strongest, the tested ones. The ones who knew how to drink water while keeping their eyes on the enemy. The ones who understood that victory comes not by might nor by power, but by the Spirit of the Lord. You are part of God's 300. Every sleepless night you've spent in prayer, every tear you've cried over this nation, every time you've whispered, "God, use me," when everyone else thought you were done, it was preparation. It was training. It was God forging you in the furnace of faithfulness for this exact moment. Do you understand what's happening right now? While the world panics about politics and plagues, God is positioning His remnant. While they're looking for salvation in politicians and pills, He's raising up an army of intercessors who know that the battle isn't flesh and blood. While they're searching for answers on social media, He's awakening those who know where to find wisdom on their knees. You've been hidden for protection, but now you're being revealed for purpose. I can see some of you right now, tears streaming down your face, because for the first time in years, someone is telling you that you matter, that your prayers matter, that your voice matters, that your time isn't over, it's just beginning. But here's the urgency you need to understand. The window is closing, the darkness is deepening, the harvest is ready, but the laborers are few. And while everyone is looking for young warriors to rise up, God is tapping on the shoulders of His seasoned saints and saying, "This is your hour. This is why I've kept you. This is why you've survived everything you've survived. Every battle you've won, every storm you've weathered, every valley you've walked through, it was preparation for this moment." The remnant isn't rising because they're young and energetic. The remnant is rising because they're tested and true. They've seen God move mountains before. They've watched Him part Red Seas in their own lives. They know the power of persistent prayer because they've prayed through decades of difficulties. And when they rise, everything changes. And you are one of them. This isn't about starting a revolution in the streets. This is about starting a revival in the prayer closet. This isn't about protesting in public squares. This is about interceding in secret places. This isn't about making noise on social media. This is about making power moves in the spiritual realm. The question that should be burning in your heart right now is this: will you answer the call, or will you let another generation face these dark days without the covering of your prayers? If you know you're part of this remnant, if you feel that fire reigniting in your spirit, if you're ready to stop acting your age and start walking in your assignment, type, "I won't stay silent," because what happens next depends on whether the remnant will rise or remain hidden. And I have a feeling I have a divine knowing that your silence ends today. The enemy thought he had buried you, but he just planted you. And now it's time to grow. You know what haunts me most about serving God's people for 50 years? It's not the tragedies I've witnessed. It's not the broken marriages or the rebellious children or even the financial collapses. It's walking into living rooms across America and seeing mantles hanging in spiritual closets, gathering dust like forgotten wedding dresses. There's a coat in your closet, dear one. A mantle you used to carry with fire in your bones and lightning in your voice. You remember it, don't you? The weight of it across your shoulders when you first said yes to God's calling. When you stood in front of that Sunday school class of 8-year-olds and felt heaven's approval wash over you like warm honey. When you wrote that first song and angels wept. When you opened your mouth to pray and demons fled 3 counties over. What happened to that person? Let me tell you what happened. Life happened. Rejection happened. That pastor who told you women couldn't teach. That record label that said your song wasn't commercial enough. That ministry that crumbled when your partner walked away with the church funds and your dignity. That moment when you stood in an empty sanctuary, arms raised to a God who felt 1,000,000 miles away, and whispered the words that broke heaven's heart. I quit. But here's what you didn't know while you were burying that mantle under years of disappointment and decades of what-ifs. God never accepted your resignation. The calling didn't expire. It was just covered in grief. Listen to me, chosen one. I've been in ministry longer than some of you have been breathing, and I can tell you this truth with absolute certainty. Every abandoned ministry, every dead dream, every forgotten song is crying out from the grave right now, because resurrection season has arrived. You think that children's ministry you walked away from after that parent complained about your teaching? God's not done with that. You think that worship leading you gave up when your voice cracked during that solo? Heaven's not finished with your song. You think that prayer group that dissolved when everyone got too busy? The intercession anointing on your life is stronger now than it was 20 years ago. Why? Because suffering sanctifies, pain purifies, and grief graduates you from amateur hour into the major leagues of God's army. David wrote Psalm 23 in a cave, not a cathedral. Paul penned half the New Testament from a prison cell. Moses received the 10 Commandments after 40 years of thinking he was washed up in the wilderness. Your breakdown wasn't your disqualification, it was your doctoral program in dependence on God. But I need you to understand something that will shatter every lie the enemy whispered in your ear during those dark years. When Jesus called the 12 disciples, he didn't choose them because they were perfect. Matthew was a crooked tax collector. Peter was a hot-headed fisherman who denied Christ 3 times. Thomas doubted everything. Judas betrayed the Son of God for 30 pieces of silver. And yet, Jesus looked at this ragtag group of misfits and said, "These are my chosen vessels," not because of who they were, but because of who he would make them become. The same Jesus who restored Peter after his denial is standing in your closet right now, pulling out that dusty mantle, shaking off the mothballs of regret, and saying with tears in his eyes, "I never changed my mind about you." You see, while you were counting yourself out, God was counting you in. While you were writing your obituary, heaven was writing your comeback story. While you were saying, "I'm too old, too broken, too tired," the Holy Spirit was saying, "Now you're finally ready." Ready for what? Ready to minister out of your scars instead of your strength. Ready to sing songs that only broken hearts can write. Ready to pray prayers that only desperate souls can pray. Ready to love people the way only the wounded can love, with no pretense, no performance, just pure, unfiltered grace. I'm telling you, the world doesn't need another polished preacher or another perfect praise team. The world needs you, scarred you, limping you, still getting back up you. Because when people see what God can do with someone who's been through hell and came back praising, that's when miracles happen. Ezekiel 37 tells us about a valley full of dry bones. dead, scattered, hopeless. But when the prophet spoke God's word over that graveyard, those bones came together, sinew by sinew, muscle by muscle, until a mighty army stood where death once reigned. Your dreams aren't dead. They're just waiting for Resurrection Sunday. That book you were supposed to write? The chapters are still in you. That ministry you were called to lead. The anointing never left. That song you were meant to sing. Your voice is sweeter now because it's been seasoned with tears. God is standing in your closet right now, holding that mantle in his nail-scarred hands. And he's not asking if you're qualified. He's asking if you're willing, not if you're perfect. If you're available, not if you're young enough or smart enough or talented enough. He's asking if you're desperate enough to let him be strong in your weakness. The mantle isn't heavy anymore, dear one. It's been washed in the blood of the Lamb and strengthened by the prayers of the saints. It fits differently now, not with the arrogance of youth, but with the authority of someone who's walked through fire and lived to tell about it. Go find it. Dust it off. Feel the weight of heaven's approval settling on your shoulders one more time. Because the very thing that almost destroyed you is about to become the very thing God uses to save others. The question that will determine your next chapter is this: will you let fear keep that mantle in the closet, or will you let faith put it back where it belongs? You know what breaks my heart? Walking through nursing homes, senior centers, retirement communities across this great nation, and seeing the most spiritually powerful generation in American history sitting in silence, convinced their time is over, convinced their voice doesn't matter anymore. But let me tell you something that's going to shake you to your core. God's generals aren't 3 0-year-olds on TikTok. They're 7 0-year-olds in prayer rooms. You've been sitting there thinking your assignment ended when you retired, thinking your calling expired when your body slowed down, thinking God put you on the bench when he moved you from the marketplace to the rocking chair. You couldn't be more wrong. The shaking that's coming, and you feel it, don't you? It's not going to be solved by young warriors who've never been tested. It's going to require the wisdom of those who've already walked through the valley of the shadow of death and lived to tell about it. When did we start believing that gray hair was God's way of saying game over? Listen to me carefully. Every disappointment you've endured, every loss you've grieved, every storm you've weathered, it wasn't punishment. It was preparation. The silence wasn't rejection. It was recalibration. God has been preparing you for the greatest assignment of your entire life. Not when you were 25 and full of energy. Not when you were 45 and building your career. Now, right now, when you have something that can't be taught in seminary or learned from a book, tested faith. You remember Noah, don't you? After the flood, after the devastation, after everything familiar had been washed away, what did he do? Did he sit in his tent feeling sorry for himself? Did he complain that he was too old to start over? Genesis 8:20 tells us, "Then Noah built an altar to the Lord." He didn't just survive the shaking, he became the rebuilder, the restorer, the one who re-established God's covenant with a broken world. And that's exactly what God is calling you to do right now. You see, there's something the younger generation doesn't understand about crisis. They panic, they react, they post about it. But you've seen enough storms to know the difference between noise and actual thunder. You've buried enough loved ones to know the difference between temporary setbacks and eternal perspective. Your mouth will matter in this season. Every word you speak carries the weight of decades of experience. When you pray, heaven leans in because you're not just reciting words, you're speaking from a place of proven faithfulness. When you warn, people should listen because you've seen what happens when they don't. But here's what's happening instead. You're sitting silent while the world burns around you. You're watching your grandchildren lose their way while you convince yourself you don't have the right to speak up. You're seeing your nation crumble while you think your voice is too old, too outdated, too irrelevant. Stop it. Just stop it. Isaiah 46:4 says, "Even to your old age and gray hairs I am he. I am he who will sustain you. I have made you, and I will carry you. I will sustain you, and I will rescue you." God didn't say, "I used to sustain you when you were younger." He said, "Even to your old age," present tense, active tense, current assignment. You think God is done with you because your knees creak. Moses was 80 when he confronted Pharaoh. You think your time has passed because you need reading glasses. Abraham was 100 when he received Isaac. You think you're too tired to lead. Joshua was pushing 90 when he conquered the promised land. Your wisdom is needed where chaos reigns. Right now, there are families falling apart who need the stability you've learned through 50 years of marriage. There are young parents overwhelmed by fear who need the perspective you've gained from raising children through every kind of storm. There are churches confused by false teaching who need the biblical foundation you've built through decades of walking with God. But you're staying quiet. You're staying hidden. You're letting the assignment pass to people who have passion but no wisdom, energy but no discernment, volume but no authority. When are you going to understand that this is your moment? The shaking that's coming, and it is coming, will separate the wheat from the chaff. And when the dust settles, when the noise dies down, when the panic subsides, people are going to look around for someone who's still standing, someone who's been through this before, someone who knows how to rebuild from rubble. That someone is you. You are not just chosen to rebuild. You are chosen to speak, to warn, to lead. Not from a stage or a platform, but from your kitchen table, your front porch, your prayer chair. The most powerful pulpit in America isn't in a megachurch. It's in your living room when your family comes to you for answers. This is your third act, not your final bow. The silence you've been walking through, it wasn't God rejecting you, it was God preparing you. Stripping away everything that wasn't essential, teaching you to hear His voice above all the noise. Building in you the kind of unshakable faith that can only come through fire. And now, right now, in this moment when everything familiar is about to be shaken, God is saying, "Now, speak now, lead now. This is what I've been preparing you for." If you've been waiting for a sign to speak again, this is it. The assignment isn't over, it's just beginning. And you're not too old, too tired, or too forgotten to carry it out. You're exactly the right age, with exactly the right experience, at exactly the right time. Type, "I receive the assignment." Because the world doesn't need another young voice, it needs your voice. Tested, proven, unafraid, ready to speak truth into chaos and bring order out of confusion. Your moment isn't behind you, it's right now. Let me leave you with this truth that I need you to carry in your heart long after this video ends. You are not an accident. You are not forgotten. You are not too late. Everything I've shared with you today comes down to 3 unshakable truths. First, the shaking you feel around you isn't chaos, it's God clearing the stage for your final act. Second, your age isn't your disqualification, it's your credential. And third, the assignment you thought was over has only just begun. I know some of you are sitting there right now, feeling the weight of years, the ache of loss, the burden of wondering if you still matter. Let me tell you something. With the authority of 5 decades walking with God, you matter more now than you ever have. The gray in your hair isn't a sign of decline, it's a crown of wisdom. The wrinkles on your face aren't marks of defeat, they're lines drawn by a life fully lived. The slowness in your step isn't weakness, it's the measured pace of someone who knows where they're going. And you're not walking this path alone, not for one single step. Right now, as I speak these words, there are thousands of people just like you watching this message. Seniors who felt forgotten, overlooked, set aside. But look what God has done. He's brought you all together in this moment, in this virtual sanctuary, to remind you that you are part of something bigger than your individual struggles. We are a community, a family, a battalion of tested warriors who refuse to surrender our post just because the world says our time is up. And in this community, no one prays alone, no one struggles alone, no one faces the assignment alone. In the comments below, I want you to share your heart. Tell us what God is stirring in you. Ask for prayer if you need it. Encourage someone who might be struggling with doubt. Share your wisdom with someone just beginning their journey. And please, share this message with others who need to hear it. That friend sitting in silence, that neighbor who thinks their best days are behind them, that family member who's given up on their calling. Because here's what I know after 50 years of ministry. The moment we start supporting each other, instead of competing with each other, the moment we start lifting each other up instead of writing each other off, that's when heaven moves on earth. And if you've stayed with me through this entire message, if every word has resonated in your spirit, then do me one favor. Subscribe to this channel, not for me, but for you. Because this conversation isn't ending here. This is just the beginning of God calling his seasoned saints back into active duty. But before you go, before you close this video and return to your day, I want to pray with you. Not at you, but with you. As someone who's walked this road, who's felt what you feel, who understands the weight of wondering if God still has plans for your life. Let me pray for you. Heavenly Father, I come before you right now with my hand on the shoulder of every precious soul listening to these words. Lord, they've carried so much. They've weathered so many storms. They've buried dreams, grieved losses, and wondered if their time of usefulness has passed. But you, God, you see something different. You see a generation of tested faith, proven character, and unshakable hope. You see the very people you've been preparing for such a time